Thank you. I'm going to be leaving pretty much right away after I speak, and it's not because I don't care what these people have to say. It's because I brought my twin 5-year-olds with me, and I care more about getting them home before they melt down. We're getting ready to go. I told them that I was going to speak at a socialist conference, and they said, well, what's a socialist? And I said, a socialist is someone who thinks everybody should have enough and nobody should have too much. And, of course, the next question after that was, why? And I figure eventually they'll get old enough to come to these conferences on their own. So you might be wondering why a guy that runs a homeless newspaper and is a homeless advocate is here talking about Seattle's proposed new municipal jail. And the connections are actually really, really clear once you understand what homelessness is about. A lot of people have this sort of 19th century notion of homelessness, you know, hobos, sterno bums, marginal characters. The guy in the Union Gospel ad with the white beard that looks like the kind of wino grandpa that you want to take home for Thanksgiving dinner. That's not what homelessness is about at all. Homelessness is about structural dislocation in the economy. It's about globalization. You know, the last massive period of homelessness that we had in this country started with the imposition of the factory system that displaced the home system of labor and inverted the relationship between rural and urban economies and created massive dislocation after the Civil War, and that lasted through 3 depressions right up to the end of World War II. We had Hoovervilles right here in Seattle. And you know, homelessness was ended by progressive economic policies that lifted the broad middle class and led to 30 years of declining rates of inequality and steady economic growth. Things like the GI Bill, the largest engine of class mobility this country has ever seen, guaranteed FHA loans, big infrastructure projects that put people to work. It's sort of a tripartite agreement between labor and government and big business that nobody was going to tend too much to their own interests, but they were going to work together to defend the common good. That pretty much all went to hell in the 70s with globalization, and that's when we started to see massive homelessness again. And homelessness is essentially a problem of surplus people in a global economy. It's people who, I mean, there's frictional unemployment, we all know about that, but the long-term homeless folks, you know, the people that are filling the shelters, those are people that have been written off by the economy. And the way things work, Pippin and Cloward wrote about this in Regulating the Poor, the way things work is that when there's an expectation that people will once again be needed in the economy, then those people are maintained through things like public housing and welfare benefits and things like that. But when there's no expectation that those people are coming back, they're just written off and thrown to the wolves. And that's what homelessness is about now. It's about writing people off and throwing to the wolves. If you take a graph that shows the growth in institutional sheltering over the 80s. In most cities, it tripled and quadrupled over the 80s, and it's been rising, you know, fairly steadily and you know, more or less dramatically since. If you take a chart that shows that, and you take a chart that shows the boom in the prison system over the 80s, it's the same hockey stick, you know, it goes like that. You match it up, it's the same thing. They're both about the problem of what do you do with people, how do you contain people who have been written off in this economy, people that there is no room for, that there will never be room for again, people who come from devastated urban economies. The war on drugs has been the blunt instrument that has been driving incarceration since the 80s. And, you know, when you look at drugs, it's really kind of the perfect commodity because it offers oblivion and economic opportunity in the same convenient package. So, it's really not surprising that a lot of people get involved. But when you get a felony for dealing drugs, you know what happens? You are cut off for life from receiving TANF benefits, from receiving veterans benefits, from getting into public housing, from receiving school loans. There's a fifth thing too. I always blank on my list of 5. What is it? Well, voting. Yeah, voting's a given. Disenfranchisement. Veterans benefits. You even lose your veterans benefits. I teach a class on this, and I ask my students why they think that is, and they just can't they're like 19, 20. They can't quite wrap their head around pure evil yet, so they usually don't get it. And I say this is about making sure that people who are down are never going to get back up, right? That's what it's about. So Seattle thinks they need a new jail. Kind of weird, because incarceration rates in the city of Seattle have gone down by 38%, while the population has risen by 8%. They say it's really sad. Nobody wants a new jail. But, they need a new jail. And they've kind of cooked figures to support that, despite the fact that their projections of how many jail beds that they would need have been wildly off, because there's a number of programs like housing vouchers for people who are being released from prison, work-study, that's college, work release programs. There's programs like Clean Dreams that are like pre-arrest diversion programs that basically take at-risk people and help them have alternatives. Well, those programs are all on the county and city budget chopping board.